What's happening, guys? Cooper Carter here for G66, and on this week's Fractal Friday, I'm going to show you my method for a front of house mute switch that keeps the guitar playing in your ears so that you can warm up or check tuning, but employs a really cool layout trick to make it abundantly clear that you are in fact muted at front of house, so that when it comes time to start the song, you can be absolutely certain that you are not the only one who can hear the guitar. A few years ago, I was working with a Fractal artist who wanted the ability to mute his guitar signal at front of house at will, at the press of a foot switch on his pedal board without having to bother his front of house engineer. Now, of course, the solution to this seems simple. Just put a tuner switch with a mute or maybe a volume pedal. You can pull it down or hit the tuner and then you're muted. But he also wanted to be able to still hear the guitar in his in-ear monitors so that he could warm up before the show, keep his fingers warm during breaks in the set, or even just check tuning. Now, of course, the danger here in having a button that mutes you at front of house but keeps you on in the ears is it could become very easy to start a song thinking you're playing and the audience can't hear any guitar and you're the only one rocking out. To complicate the issue even further, this artist was playing on an absolutely massive stage. So we needed to find a way that made it very, very obvious that he was muted when he was in fact muted at front of house. 2 weeks ago on Fractal Friday, Neil Zaza mentioned that he employs a front of house mute switch on his rig, and there were a lot of questions on YouTube and on the Fractal forum about how exactly he was doing that. Now, of course, like with all things in Fractal land, there are many, many different avenues by which we can arrive at the same result, muting the signal at front of house, keeping it on in the in-ear monitors. This is one method, again, that I developed a couple of years ago that I really like because it makes it incredibly clear when you are in fact muted at front of house. But as always, this is just a very quick video showing one technique. If you guys want to get the absolute most out of your Fractal Audio Systems unit, whether that's the Axe-Fx 3, the FM9, or the FM3, make sure to visit classes.coopercarter.com for my complete Fractal Audio Masterclass series. I'm on the Axe-Fx 3 this week, but this method is equally applicable to the FM9 and the FM3 with or without FC controllers. Of course, on the FM3, you would really need to want a front of house mute switch to dedicate 1 out of 3 to just that feature, but maybe it's very important to you. I'm here on my current live preset, CC 2023. The main scene is the AC20. It sounds something like this. I have outputs 1 and 2 set up to be my full range feeds. You'll notice I do also have output 3 here bypassing the cab. I sometimes use that for an on-stage cabinet send, but I'll go ahead and bypass that so we don't see it because you probably wouldn't want to use an on-stage cab in this kind of setup because if you mute front of house, you're still going to hear the cab and you'd have to figure out a way to mute that as well. And that's beyond the scope of this video. So output 1 is going to front of house. Output 2 is going to either an in-ears rig on stage or to a monitor board. Both of these are the same signal though. Now you can run out to front of house and to monitors, either mono or stereo. It doesn't make a difference in this case with this method. It's really up to you how many inputs you want to take up on your board. You may not have 4 different channels available just for guitar on your board. That might be overkill and you can get some flack from your bandmates. But if you've got a dedicated ears rig, you'll need just 2 channels for front of house and then 2 channels on your ears rack. So with this method, it's very simple to mute front of house. We're simply just going to bypass output 1, and now our signal to front of house is muted and the ears are still getting fed. That is literally all there is to it. So playing, muted, and back on at front of house. It is that simple. Now, of course, keep in mind that when you do mute output 1 wholesale, you are also muting delay and reverb tails, so you'll want to wait for those to carry over before you actually mute your signal. But let's talk about actually activating this mute on your FC controller, in my case, since I'm on the Axe-Fx 3, or if you're on the FM9 or FM3, you might want to assign this switch on the unit itself. I'm going to go to FC Edit here. I'm going to go to layout 3, which is my main layout. You see I've got my scenes across the bottom here. I've got some effect bypass and channel switches here. And then finally, I've got my tuner, my tap tempo. Each of those has some hold functions. And then we come to my big old mute switch here. Now we'll get into the specifics of what I've done here with this switch in a second, but for now, let's go ahead and reset this switch. I'm sure I want to reset. The simplest way, of course, to mute our signal is to assign this to effect, bypass, and then select output 1. And now the switch bypasses output 1. It turns it on and off. So I'll just click it. Instant mute and unmute. But in a live stage environment, I tend to think that having a quick access, one touch button that mutes your signal at front of house and keeps it going in your ears is a bit of a dangerous thing. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and actually copy this tap function to the hold function of this switch. And we'll go ahead and clear the tap function. So now I need to hold down the switch in order to actually mute my signal to front of house. But now you'll notice that on our scribble strip, we actually don't have anything showing because they don't show the hold functions by default. So a quick little trick, you can easily just take care of this problem by assigning this switch to the bypass of an effect that's not in your preset. So I'm just going to pick volume panner 4 because there's almost no conceivable situation in my playing where I would ever have 4 volume blocks. There's no danger of this ever becoming a problem. And now we can go to the custom name here and name this mute. Now the switch is going to show blue on the editor here, but you're not going to see a color on the actual foot switch itself because this effect is not in the preset. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear that out so that it looks the same on the editor and on the unit. Now you'll notice if we hold down the foot switch, we briefly see this output 1 name flash up to show us what the hold function is. I'm going to go ahead and create a custom name for this as well, so that when you're holding down the switch, it warns you that you're muting front of house. So now we have a switch that bypasses and unbypasses our output 1 signal to the front of house. But now we find ourselves in the position I alluded to earlier of not readily being able to visually see whether or not we are muted at front of house. Now, of course, even the best ears have a little bit of bleed. You might, with a powerful enough front of house system, be able to tell if you're on in the mains over your ear signal, but you don't really want to take that risk. So let's create a very obvious indicator of whether or not we are on at front of house. I'll go back to FC Edit here, and this mute switch, I'm going to edit links, and I'm going to layout link the hold function of this switch on FC1, which is the FC I have connected, to layout 8. So now when I activate the hold function of this switch, bypassing output 1, muting us at front of house, we're also going to instantly jump up to layout 8. Layout 8 is my front of house mute layout, and it has every button red and with a bunch of exclamation points and all capital letters muted across every switch on the layout. Now, each of these switches is set to a tap function that bypasses output 1. So we are on this layout, which means we have held down the foot switch on the main layout. We have bypassed output 1, so we are muted at front of house. And we see this layout screen containing, in this case, 12 different buttons that tell us we are muted. And if we click any one of them, we will unbypass or reactivate output 1. But there's one more step that takes this just to the next level and makes this an incredibly cool feature. I have also layout linked every one of these switches back to layout 3, my main layout. So when I press any one of these switches, it unmutes my signal at front of house, bringing me back up in the mains, and it returns me to my main layout. And if one of your reasons for wanting to mute yourself at front of house is to be able to tune while you can still hear yourself in your ears, we could go ahead and assign one of these switches to a tuner. So let's go ahead and reset the tap function here. We'll go ahead and turn off this layout link. That's important because you don't want to jump back to the main layout when you hit your tuner. And we'll just assign this to utility, tuner, and let's make it blue so it looks a little bit different. And now we can access the tuner while we're muted at front of house. Just make sure that if you do want to do this, you've gone to setup and then tuner and made sure that the mute on the tuner is set to off. Otherwise, when you hit the tuner, you will also mute yourself in your ears as well. So press and hold the mute switch. Our signal is muted at front of house, and we pull up a layout that makes it very obvious that we are muted. And then hitting any switch on this layout will return our signal to the mains and return us to our main performance layout. If you are like the vast majority of players and don't have the luxury and good fortune to tour and play with a dedicated front of house engineer and monitor engineer, this method can really claim a little bit of that luxury experience for you, allowing you to warm up off stage in your ears, hit a button, and then broadcast yourself in the mains. Now, of course, you might have to survive a difficult conversation with your bandmates about the prima donna guitar player who needs 4 different channels, or maybe just 2 channels if you're running mono, for your guitar signal, but that might be a conversation worth having for the amount of control this gives you. Of course, if you are touring with an on-stage dedicated ears rig, which is very popular now, and simply sending a signal to front of house, this method is a no-brainer. And even for pros who do have engineers, this might be something worth exploring to give yourself more control on stage. And of course, with the layout trick, it's going to be very clear when you are still muted. So hopefully no danger there unless you are truly not paying attention. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to G66's channel, and leave me a comment in the comment section below, letting me know what you would like to see on a future Fractal Friday. And as always, if you guys want to get the absolute most out of your Fractal Audio Systems unit, whether that's the Axfx 3, the FM9, or the FM3, make sure to visit classes.coopercarter.com for my complete Fractal Audio Masterclass series. Next week is the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. So if you do celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday or Native American Heritage Day on Friday, a very happy holidays to you. There will not be an episode next week, but for all things Fractal Audio, keep it right here on G66, and I will see you guys very soon on Fractal Friday.